Hey World History, welcome to Chapter 16, The Age of Absolutism, where we look at, can a 5-year-old be a good king? Can we have multiple wars of religion and still have a strong and colonizing Europe? How do we increase royal power in such a way that most particularly benefits the monarchs, but also creates these legacies of power that you still hear of in Europe today? And where we remind you that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman, and definitely not an empire. Let's begin. And if this was a John Green video, this is where the theme song would play. But I don't have a theme song. Sorry. If you want to write me one, I'll give you extra credit. Just saying. All right, so let's talk about Spanish power. So Philip II, who you haven't heard of, but you've heard of his wife. Her name was Mary. She was also known as Bloody Mary. Yes, that Mary who waged a war on Protestants because she was the only Catholic child of King Henry VIII, also known as the guy with all the wives. How many wives? I can hear Anna yelling it based on the musical title. 6. All right, so Philip said, "It is best to keep an eye on everything." And he meant it. As king of the most powerful nation in Europe at the time, he gave little time to pleasure. Instead, he plowed through a mountain of paperwork each day, making notes on even the most trivial matters. But Philip's determination to keep an eye on everything extended far beyond this. It helped him to build Spain into a strong and centralized state. By the late 1500s, he had concentrated all power in his own hands, meaning he was in control of Spain. Not a parliament, not a ruling body, not a congress, just him. Over the next 200 years, other European monarchs would pursue similar goals. So last chapter, we talked a lot about what they were doing outside of their nations, what the European countries were doing in Africa, in Asia, and in North America. In this chapter, we're going to talk about what they're doing in their own country. All right? So let's talk about Spain. Charles V inherits 2 crowns. So you've got these monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella. Where have you heard of them before? Anybody? If you said they were the ones that gave Christopher Columbus the money to go exploring where he ultimately discovered, heavy air quotes, the Americas, you would be correct. Ferdinand and Isabella had several children. Their grandson was Charles V. Basically, so their grandson was originally called Charles I, and he became the king of Spain in 1516, and therefore became the king of all the Spanish colonies as well. But when his other grandfather died, like grandfather on his other side, he also became heir to the sprawling Habsburg Empire, which included the Holy Roman Empire, neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, but it was Germany, essentially, and the Netherlands. As the ruler of this empire, he took the name Charles V, because he was the 5th Charles to rule the Holy Roman Empire type Habsburgish type thing. So we call him Charles V, despite the fact that he was the first Charles to be king in Spain. Confused yet? It's fine. Just put a V after his name. Okay, so we got Charles V, because the V is the Roman numeral 5. He is in charge of the Habsburg Empire, and ruling 2 empires involved him in constant warfare, right? So if you don't know where Germany is, it's on the other side of France from Spain. So you have Spain, and then you have France, and then you have Germany. So he's in charge of Germany and he's in charge of Spain, but he's not in charge of France. So his empire is kind of scattered. As the ruler of the empire, he was a devout Catholic, and he fought to suppress Protestantism in the German states, which was where it first flourished. So this is kind of a hard battle. Charles was forced to allow the German princes to choose their own religion, which is what they had been doing, and he finally gave in. Charles also faced the Muslim Ottoman Empire, which has by this point encroached far into Europe. See the map on page 505. And he's fighting and is really almost up to the border of the Habsburg Empire. So the empire is based in Turkey, but it stretched across the Balkans. Under Suleiman, remember Suleiman the Magnificent, Ottoman forces advanced across Central Europe to the walls surrounding Vienna, Austria. So they made it pretty far into Europe. Although Austria held firm, the Ottomans occupied much of Hungary, and after their battle at the Battle of Mohacs, not mohawks like the hairstyle. The Ottoman naval forces also continued to challenge Spanish power in the Mediterranean. And so Charles V is having a really hard time. Poor guy. And he ends up abdicating, which means he gives up his titles and he enters a monastery. You don't have to enter a monastery if you abdicate, but it does mean you give up your title. Basically means you run away from the power. He divided his empire. He left the Habsburg lands to his brother Ferdinand, who became the next Holy Roman Emperor, and he gave Spain, the Netherlands, and some southern Italian states to his 29-year-old son Philip, who became Philip II. Okay, so Charles V attempts and fails to rule the Holy Roman Empire, aka the Habsburg Empire, and Spain. And he fails. So he abdicates. Say it with me. Abdicate. Abdicate means to leave, run away. Run away from your power. And leave. So the Holy Roman Empire is now left to Ferdinand, his brother, and Spain, and some other provinces like the Netherlands, are left to brother and to Philip, his son. Okay? So, why did he divide it? Because he couldn't rule all of it. No one man could. It was too scattered. It wasn't unified at all. So, Philip II, though, solidifies his power. During his 42-year reign, 42 years, that's a long time, Philip II extended Spanish influence, strengthened the Catholic Church, and made his own power absolute. Thanks in part to silver from the Spanish colonies, he also made Spain, for a time, the strongest power in Europe. Like his father, he was hardworking, devout, and ambitious. Unlike many other monarchs who wanted to spend a lot of time having fun, he devoted a lot of his time to government work. He seldom hunted, never jousted, and lived simply, pretty much as a monk. The king's isolated, somber palace outside Madrid reflected his character. It was a church, it was a residence, it was a tomb. He wasn't a very lively guy. He surpassed even Ferdinand and Isabella, who had united a lot of power in making every part of the government responsible to him. He reigned as what we call an absolute monarch. So he is, as you may guess, an absolute monarch holds all of the power. That's what absolute means, complete, total. So every bit of the government reports directly to him. Like most other rulers, he asserted that he ruled from divine right. Divine meaning, comes from above, from God, all that. So he said that he believed his authority to rule came directly from God. He saw himself as the guardian of the Roman Catholic Church, and the biggest undertaking, his purpose in life, was to defend the Catholic Reformation, stop the Protestant tide, and within his empire, he enforced religious unity, turning the Inquisition against Protestants and other people thought to be heretics. So, when you hear Spanish Inquisition, most of it, not all of it, but a good chunk of it, was under this guy, Philip II. So, to do this, though, this is not a peaceful endeavor. He has to fight a lot of battles. So he fought many wars as he attempted to advance the Spanish Catholic power. In the Mediterranean, the Ottoman Empire is continuing to pose a threat, and the Ottoman Empire is most decidedly not Catholic. At the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, Spain and its Italian allies soundly defeated an Ottoman army off the coast of Greece. An Ottoman fleet, so ships. Although the Ottoman Empire would remain a major power in the Mediterranean for 3 more centuries, Christians still hailed the battle as a great victory and as a demonstration of Spanish power. So that again is the Battle of Lepanto. Okay, so we'll put versus the Ottomans. So we'll say 1571 victory at Lepanto, which was again praised as this huge Christian victory. Okay. So, and this is Protestants and Catholics alike that are saying it's a victory for Christianity because they can't agree on much, but they can agree that they don't like Muslims. It's just how it worked. So, during the last half of his reign, Philip battled rebels in the Netherlands. At the time, the region included 17 provinces that today include Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. So what they called the Netherlands, we now call 3 separate countries. It was the richest part of Philip's empire. Protestants in the region resisted Philip's effort to crush their faith. Protestants and Catholics alike both hated high taxes and autocratic Spanish rule. So, again, one other thing that the Protestants and the Catholics could agree on is they don't like paying taxes. Something most people can agree on. In the 1560s, riots against the Inquisition sparked this general uprising in the northern, mostly because Protestants and people who were used to having a bit more freedom are not happy with Philip coming in and trying to take all this power. And so in 1581, the northern Protestant provinces declared their independence from Spain and became known as the Dutch Netherlands. They did not gain official recognition, though, until 1648. The southern, more Catholic part of the Netherlands remained part of the Spanish Empire. Okay, so this happens in 1581. So verse the Netherlands. So 1581, the northern declares independence, and they become the Dutch Netherlands. All right, so now let's talk about the Armada. So every great nation has to have some great fighting force, or else they can't maintain their power, especially in this time period. Spain's big deal was power of the seas. So Spain sits on the Iberian Peninsula. If it weren't for Portugal, Spain would be a complete peninsula, meaning surrounded on all sides with water but one. So it's connected to France. So like 3 sides-ish, you know. Spain isn't really a square, but you get the idea. And so Spain relies on naval power to enforce their dominance. You noted that the Battle of Lepanto they defeated an Ottoman fleet of ships. The Spanish Navy, also known as the Spanish Armada, was an unbeatable fighting force for much of the 1500s. By the 1580s, Philip saw England's Queen Elizabeth I as his chief Protestant enemy. You may remember Queen Elizabeth as the daughter of Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was the wife of Henry VIII, and anybody remember how she died? If you said beheaded, you were correct. She got her head chopped off because she gave birth to a daughter and not to a son. Tough luck there. Elizabeth I is Anne Boleyn's daughter, who is a staunch Protestant. You may recall that it was her mother telling Henry VIII, saying, hey, I won't just have an affair with you, I want to marry you. And so it was this divorce that he wasn't able to get from the Catholic Church, so he broke from the Catholic Church, made his own church, legalized divorce, got divorced from his wife Catherine of Aragon, who was Bloody Mary's mom, marries Anne Boleyn, she gives birth to Elizabeth, he decides that he doesn't like her anymore, beheads her, but keeps the Protestant religion. All that to say, Elizabeth is very much Protestant, and she's fighting for the rights of Protestants. And so Philip wants to fight England, led by Elizabeth I. Now, Elizabeth had supported the Dutch against Spain. So not only was she fighting for Protestantism, but she also publicly supported Philip's enemies. Fun fact, Philip had once been Elizabeth's brother-in-law. Yeah. European politics. Good times. Philip was actually married to Bloody Mary for 4 years, until she passed away. He didn't like her much, and he didn't spend a lot of time in England, but the alliance was really good for Spain, because England at the time was Catholic. But then Mary died, Philip got a young, hot wife that he liked a lot better than Mary, who was older than he was, and England is now Protestant, so he hates them. Hope you're staying with me through all that. Welcome to European politics in the 1500s. It's a mess. Anyways, Elizabeth has supported the Netherlands against Philip, so she has supported his sworn enemies who rebelled against his rule and even declared their own independence. She is also encouraging English captains such as Sir Francis Drake, who we read about last chapter. He's a privateer. What's a privateer? If you said legal pirate, you're correct. To Philip's dismay, Elizabeth makes Drake a knight, even though he was looting all of Philip's ships. That's rude. It's like a slap in the face. So to end the English attacks and subdue the Dutch, Philip prepares this massive armada to carry an invasion towards England. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed with more than 130 ships, 20,000 men, over 2,000 pieces of artillery. So that's like cannons. They had over 2,000 cannons. The Spanish were confident of a victory. They said, when we meet the English, God will surely arrange matters so we can grapple and board them, either by sending some strange freak of weather or more than likely just depriving the English of their wits. So they basically said, God will make them stupid so we can win. Not maybe your best battle strategy, but it was a good try. Actually, it didn't come to pass, and actually almost the opposite happened. Spain was hit by a lot of disasters at sea and a couple disasters at home. I wrote a whole paper on it back in college. Really interesting, really freak accidents for the Spanish, but they ended up getting their butts kicked by the English, and the tattered remains limped home in defeat, and that was the end of Spanish domination in the seas. So that's 1588, loss to England. Big loss. So because of this, the empire starts to decline. The defeat of the Armada marked the beginning of the end of Spanish power. Through the 1600s, Spain's strength and prosperity decreased. One reason for this decline is because, quite frankly, Philip's kids weren't as good at ruling as he was, as so often happens. Economic problems were also to blame. Costly overseas wars are draining the money from Spain, so even though they're getting all the silver from the colonies, you're paying for wars, they're expensive. Treasure from the Americas led Spain to neglect farming and commerce. They just focused on treasure. The government heavily taxed the middle class, which weakens them. And in other European nations, the middle class were the ones supporting royal power. The expulsion of Muslims and Jews from Spain deprived the economy of many skilled artisans and merchants. So actually one of the reasons why Spain was weakened was because they were kicking out the Muslims and the Jews, and the Muslims and the Jews were contributing to the economy. And so he kicked them out, and then less economy contributions. As Spain's power dwindled, the Dutch, the English, and the French fleet challenged and eventually surpassed Spanish power all around the world. So the century from 1550 to 1650 is often referred to as Spain's Siglo de Oro. I'm sure everybody who's fluent in Spanish should correct my pronunciation, but hopefully you got that means golden century, for the brilliance of its arts and literature. Philip II, for as boring of a guy as he may have seemed, he was actually a great patron of the arts. He founded academies of science and mathematics. Among the famous painters of the period was a guy named El Greco, meaning the Greek. He was a painter. Though not Spanish by birth, El Greco is considered to be a master of Spanish painting. Born on the Greek island of Crete, El Greco had studied in Italy before settling in Spain. He produces these haunting, religious pictures and striking portraits of Spanish nobles. His use of vibrant colors influenced the work of Diego Velázquez, the court painter to King Philip IV. Velázquez is perhaps best known for his vivid portraits of Spanish royalty. So you have lots of arts. So golden century, 1550 to 1650. So art, El Greco. And let's talk about literature. You get some writings. Lope de Vega, a peasant by birth, wrote more than 1,500 plays, comedies and romances and action. Then you have Miguel de Cervantes, and he was the most important writer because he wrote Don Quixote. Don Quixote pokes fun at Spanish and medieval tales of chivalry, is considered to be Europe's first modern novel. There's also a ballet and a play based off of it. Fun fact. So arts, literature, you have Miguel de Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote. Although Don Quixote mocks traditions of Spanish feudal past, Cervantes depicts with affection both the foolish but heroic idealism of Don Quixote and the unromantic earthly realism of his sidekick, because they even had sidekicks back then. Okay, so that was today's lesson. I know it was a little bit long. Hopefully it was kind of enjoyable for you to watch. I'm trying to make some of these videos kind of high energy, see if we can really enjoy this period of our lives in this learning. All right, so you do have a Junopod based off of this lesson. That's going to be due tomorrow. Good luck, and you guys got this. Let me know if you need anything.